The gunshots came first, then the silence. Jalea Monroe was knee-deep in the creek bed, checking the copper piping that fed water to the north pasture, when she heard them. 3 rapid bursts echoing off the canyon walls. Close enough to matter. Far enough to pretend she hadn't heard. She didn't stop working. The water flowed cold against her gloved hands, and the metal was slick. She tested the pressure valve, 2 turns counterclockwise, then back. Good. That one would last another season. Behind her, the valley stretched out like something painted, all gold light and endless sky. 200 acres of land that belonged to her and no one else. That was the deal she'd made with herself years ago. The land didn't ask questions. The land didn't leave. More sounds drifted down from the ridge. Not gunshots this time. Engines. A truck grinding through rough terrain, going hard, going fast. Jalea pulled off her gloves and straightened up. The creek whispered against the stones. She learned to read silence the way other people read faces, and this silence was wrong. This silence meant something was running toward her, not away. She climbed out of the stream bed, her boots finding purchase on the red clay bank, and turned toward the house. The cabin sat maybe a quarter-mile north, weathered wood and a tin roof that caught the afternoon light like an old mirror. Her grandfather built it 60 years ago. She'd kept it standing since her mother died. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. The horses were moving before she got to the fence, jumping and circling in their pen like they felt something electric in the air. Jalea had raised most of them since they were foals. They knew her voice, her rhythm, the particular way she moved when everything was normal versus when things had shifted sideways. Right now, they were telling her that things had shifted. She moved toward the corral, checking the gate latch. Everything secure. Feed bins full. Water trough filled that morning. If someone came, the animals would be protected. That mattered to her more than anything in the house. The engine's sound got closer, then stopped. Dead silence fell across the valley like a stone dropped into still water. No wind, no birds calling. Just the faint sound of her own breathing and the occasional nervous nicker from the horses. Jalea's hand rested on the fence post. Her heartbeat was steady. She learned long ago not to panic, but her senses sharpened. She waited. Whoever was out there would either come forward or turn back. She didn't have to chase either outcome. Then she saw him. At first, just movement through the trees at the edge of her property. A figure in dark clothes moving like something wounded, one arm hanging wrong. He stumbled once, caught himself against a pine trunk, and kept coming directly toward her corral. Jalea didn't move, didn't reach for the phone in her back pocket, didn't call for help. The man got closer, maybe 30 yards out, and she could see him clearly now. Black suit, expensive looking, the kind that cost more than she made in a month. Torn at the shoulder, one sleeve slick and dark. His face was turned down like he couldn't lift his head or wouldn't. His breathing was hard, uneven, the sound of someone running on fumes. He didn't see her yet. He was focused on the corral fence, on reaching it, using it for support. When he finally saw her, his eyes came up fast. They were dark, not brown dark, but dark like a closed room at midnight. Dark like someone who'd seen things that changed how light worked inside your head. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then his knees folded. Jalea watched him go down like a tree that had been cut. He caught the fence with his good arm, tried to stay upright, failed. His body hit the dirt hard, and something in his chest came out like a cough or a groan, too damaged to be either. She should have gone inside, should have locked the doors, should have called the police. Instead, Jalea walked toward him. The blood was real. That was the first detail her brain registered clearly. Not just a stain, but a wound that was still bleeding, dark enough to look black in the afternoon light. His shoulder, where his suit jacket was torn open. The flesh beneath showed white bone and something red that moved when he breathed. "Don't," he said. His voice was low, rough, like it hadn't been used in a long time. "Don't come closer." But Jalea was already moving to the cabin, already thinking about the first aid kit her mother had left in the kitchen drawer. Bandages, antiseptic, tape, things that wouldn't be enough for what this man was carrying, but were better than nothing. "I'm getting water," she called back. "Stay still." "You should run," the man said. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning spoken by someone too tired to make threats anymore. "You should run right now." Jalea didn't run. She got the water. Her grandmother's ceramic cup, the blue one with white flowers painted on the rim. She filled it at the kitchen sink, clean, cold, perfect, and brought it back out to where the man lay against the fence. Up close, he was older than she'd thought. 40 maybe. Handsome in a way that violence had worn down but not destroyed. His suit, even torn, spoke money. His watch, still glinting on his wrist, spoke more. She knelt down, careful not to get too close, careful not to make any sudden moves. She'd read enough books about wild animals to know that fear made creatures dangerous. "Drink," she said. The man looked at the cup like it was something from another world. Then he took it. His hand shook as he brought it to his mouth. He drank slowly, deliberately, like he was rationing something precious. When he handed the cup back, their fingers didn't touch, but the closeness meant something. She could feel the heat coming off him. Fever or shock or both. "Why?" he asked. "Because you asked for water," Jalea said. "That's reason enough." The man's eyes closed. "That's the worst decision you've made in your life." "Maybe," Jalea said. She set the cup down beside him. "Or maybe it's the best. Won't know until tomorrow." She stayed with him while the light changed. Watched his breathing get slower, steadier. Watched the shaking in his hands diminish. She didn't ask his name. Didn't ask how he got shot, or who shot him, or why a man in a $1,000 suit was bleeding in her dirt corral. Around sunset, he pushed himself up, used the fence to get vertical, and looked at her directly. "Thank you," he said. That was all. 2 words, quiet enough that they almost disappeared into the evening wind. Then he turned and walked into the trees, disappearing the way he'd come, like he was made of shadow and the valley was just returning what it had borrowed. Jalea stood alone, holding her grandmother's ceramic cup, watching the space where he'd been. The horses had calmed down. The valley had returned to its normal quiet, but the air still felt different. Still felt like something had shifted on its axis and wouldn't shift back. She didn't know it then, but she just made a choice that would remake her entire world. She didn't know that the man she gave water to was someone powerful enough to make presidents nervous. She didn't know that by morning, her quiet valley would be completely surrounded by men in black suits, their cars lined up like a plague of locusts ready to swallow everything she knew. But in that moment, standing alone as the sky turned purple, Jalea Monroe had no way of knowing that her act of compassion had just written her name into the ledger of the most dangerous man alive, and that some debts, no matter how freely given, always came due. What happens next will change everything she thought she knew about safety, power, and what it means to owe someone your life when that someone owns entire cities. The morning came the way mornings always came to Redwood Basin. Sun burning through the eastern ridges. Birds going loud in the mesquite. Dew still clinging to the fence posts and grass like diamonds that would burn off by noon. Jalea had slept maybe 2 hours. She'd tried, knowing that exhaustion in daylight would make her sloppy, but her mind wouldn't stop cycling through what she'd seen. The blood, the expensive suit, the warning in that man's voice when he said she should run. She fed the horses early, before the heat really started climbing. The animals were back to normal. The strange electric feeling had burned off overnight. They ate their grain, drank their water, moved through their routines like nothing had happened. By 7 in the morning, Jalea was on the roof, checking the gutters. Small work, maintenance work, the kind that let her hands stay busy while her mind tried to make sense of yesterday. The valley spread out below her, vast and undisturbed. 40 miles to the closest town. 6 miles to the nearest neighbor. A rancher named Jackson who kept to himself and minded his own business. She was testing a loose fastener, screwdriver in hand, when she heard it. Not one engine, multiple engines. The sound rolled up the valley like thunder, building slowly, getting closer, too many to count. Jalea straightened on the roof. The screwdriver hung from her fingers. She watched the eastern ridge, where the main road snaked into her property, where you could see maybe a quarter-mile out before the landscape folded back on itself. And the first car came into view. Black, large, expensive. It moved slowly, deliberately, like someone was taking their time, making sure to be seen. Behind it came another, then dozens, then hundreds. Julia's brain tried to process what she was seeing. The cars kept coming. Black luxury vehicles, perfectly spaced, moving up the valley road in what looked like a military convoy. Not police, not government. There was something too organized about it, too choreographed. This was a private army moving with absolute precision. Behind the cars came people, men in black suits, men who moved like soldiers, men who came out of the vehicles and took up positions on the surrounding hills, spreading out in a perfect circle around the arena at the center of her property. The dirt arena, the flat circular space where she sometimes trained the horses or just sat and watched the clouds. There had to be 300 of them, maybe more. Julia grabbed the gutter, her mind suddenly empty of everything except the pure animal instinct to stay still, to not be seen. But she was on the roof, obvious, exposed. She dropped down carefully, hand over hand on the edge, and moved to a lower pitch where the cabin walls would shield her from view. Her heart was moving fast now, really fast, but her breathing stayed controlled. Control was survival. Control was the difference between panic and action. The vehicles kept arriving. The men kept spreading out. It took maybe 10 minutes for them all to get positioned, and when they finished, they formed a perfect ring around her property. The circle was unbroken. There was no way out except through them. Julia crouched on the roof edge and waited. A red dot appeared on her cabin door. A laser sight, not from a rifle, she realized after a moment, but from an aerial camera, a drone hovering directly above her property. The dot moved across the weathered with like a finger pointing, like a warning written in light. Then she heard the voice. It came from speakers, amplified across the entire valley. Clear, low, commanding. Bring her to me. That was all. No threat, no explanation. Just those 4 words, and suddenly, 2 men emerged from the crowd of suited figures and started walking toward her cabin. They moved in perfect sync, like they'd done this 100 times before. Julia watched them come. Her hands were steady. Her mind was moving fast, calculating options. She could stay on the roof. She could go inside and lock the doors. She could run, but running wouldn't work. Not with this many people. Not with whatever this was. She climbed down the backside of the cabin, the side facing away from the gathered crowd, and dropped to the ground just as the 2 men reached the front door. She moved along the cabin wall, heading toward them, meeting them before they could break anything down or force their way in. "I'm here," she said. The men turned. They were both tall, both professional, both wearing sunglasses despite the morning sun. One of them nodded, and they both gestured for her to come with them. Julia followed. She had the strange sensation of walking toward her own execution, but her face stayed calm. Her movements stayed steady. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. The crowd of men in suits parted as she walked through them, creating a corridor that led directly to the center of the arena. The dirt arena where the laser sight had been pointing. The arena where, in the middle of all those hundreds of suited figures, stood the man from yesterday. Only today, he wasn't bleeding and half-conscious. Today he was dressed perfectly, his wounds hidden by fresh clothes, his dark eyes as alive and lethal as something forged in a furnace. He stood with his hands behind his back, his posture speaking absolute authority. He looked like something that had been hammering at the inside of that wounded man, waiting for him to heal so it could come out. When the circle of men pulled back, when the corridor closed behind her, Julia stood alone with him in the center of the arena, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses and silence, so complete it felt like sound. "You saved me," he said. His voice was different today, stronger, more controlled, carrying the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "Do you know who I am?" Julia's heartbeat had finally caught up with her. It was moving hard against her ribs, but she kept her voice steady. "No," she said. "My name is Aldrich Vale," he said, "and by now, you might have heard that name in whispers. You might have heard that I own cities. that I control men, that I have enemies who fear me more than they fear death." He paused. Let that sink in. "But what you should know is that you saved my life when you had no reason to expect anything in return. You gave water to a stranger when you could have called the police. You could have let me bleed out in your dirt." "I didn't know who you were," Jalea said. "Exactly," Aldrich replied. "That's precisely why it matters." The crowd was completely still. Hundreds of men, unmoving, watching. Then a voice came from the edge of the circle. "She saw you bleeding, Aldrich." A man stepped forward, and the crowd shifted, became tense. This man was different from the others. His suit was torn like Aldrich's had been. His face was bruised. Armed guards flanked him, holding him back, but not gently. "She knows you were weak," the man continued. His voice had an edge to it, a desperation. "That's how you go down. Not from outside enemies, but from someone inside who sees what nobody else wants to admit, that you bled in her dirt like an animal." Jalea realized this was Corbin. She didn't know his name yet, but she knew by the way he was talking, by the way the guards held him, that he was the threat. He was the reason all these men were here. Aldrich turned slowly to face him. "You tried to kill me yesterday," Aldrich said. His voice didn't change pitch, didn't get louder. "You had me ambushed on a road 6 miles from here. You had men waiting. You thought that was the end. It would have been," Corbin spat, "if this girl hadn't gotten in the way. Now you're weak. You showed weakness to a stranger, to a civilian. That's how empires fall." The words hung in the air. Aldrich looked back at Jalea. "Did you think anything of my weakness?" he asked. She understood the question immediately. He was asking if she had judged him, if she had seen him on the ground and decided he was nothing. "I thought you were human," she said. It was the truth, and it came out quiet enough that everyone had to lean in to hear it. For a moment, Aldrich Vale smiled. It was small, controlled, but it was real. Corbin's face twisted. "You're going to lose everything," Corbin said. "Every man you've ever controlled, every city you've ever owned. They're going to look at this and decide you can't protect what matters anymore. Kill her. Kill her now, or your throne collapses." Aldrich didn't move, didn't raise his voice. He simply held up one hand. Every single man in the arena froze. "Alarabun," Aldrich said, and Jalea realized he'd known her name all along. He'd probably known everything about her before he ever collapsed at her fence. "You saved my life when I was nothing but a liability. When I had nothing to offer you except trouble." He turned fully to face her, blocking out Corbin completely. "I will repay that by offering you something no one else in your life has ever offered. I will offer you protection. Absolute. Permanent. No one will ever threaten what you've built here. No one will ever take from you what you've earned." "I don't need protection," Jalea said. "You have no neighbors for 6 miles, Aldrich replied. "Someone could burn your ranch, take everything, and leave you with nothing. No one would hear your call for help." His tone wasn't cruel. It was clinical, factual. "So I will leave men here, hidden, watching. You will never see them unless you call for them, but they will be here." Jalea understood what that meant. It meant she was no longer free. It meant her quiet valley had been marked. It meant that the choice she made yesterday, to give water to a wounded stranger, had just written her into something much larger than herself. She looked at Corbin, still restrained, still spitting rage. She looked at the hundreds of men in black suits, all of them waiting for her response. She looked back at Aldrich. "What happens to him?" she asked, pointing at Corbin. "Justice," Aldrich said simply. Corbin thrashed against the guards holding him. "You can't do this," he screamed. "I'm your blood. I've been your lieutenant for 20 years. You can't let a stranger's mercy make you soft." Aldrich raised his hand again. Everyone went silent. "Take him," Aldrich said, and that was it. Corbin was dragged backward into the crowd, his screaming continuing for maybe another minute before it was swallowed by distance and the closed doors of whatever vehicle they put him in. When the sound finally faded completely, when the silence returned to the valley, Aldrich looked back at Jalea. "You saved a man," he said. "Now that man owns your future. Use it wisely." He turned and walked back toward his car. The men in black suits began moving, flowing out of their perfect circle like water from a broken dam. The vehicle started. The engines came alive, and within maybe 20 minutes, the valley was empty again. Just Jalea standing in her dirt arena, surrounded by tire tracks and dust, and the lingering memory of 300 men in black suits. The red laser was gone. The drone was gone. The crowd was gone. But nothing about the valley was the same. And in the distance, somewhere between the valley and the outside world, a man named Corbin Slate was learning that some debts are paid not in money or time, but in blood, and that mercy shown to the wrong enemy can be the most expensive choice a tyrant ever makes. What will Jalea discover about the man she saved when she realizes that protection and captivity might be wearing the exact same face? 2 weeks passed. Jalea didn't see the men. That was the strangest part. Aldrich had said they would be there, hidden, watching, but they moved like ghosts. She would catch sight of them only by accident. A glint of a watch on a ridge at sunset. A shadow moving between the trees, too deliberately to be animal. The particular absence of birds in certain areas that suggested human presence. The valley had changed character. It was still beautiful. The light still came golden across the hills. The horses still grazed in the pasture. But it was like living inside a painting that someone was watching through glass. Jalea tried to maintain her routines. She fixed fences. She trained the horses. She rode out to check the water lines like she always did. But everything felt performed now, like she was acting the part of herself while the real Jalea watched from somewhere outside her own skin. On the 15th day, he came back. She was on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise when she heard the truck. Not the roar of expensive engines this time, but a single vehicle moving slowly down the ranch road. A truck, actually not black, not new, not at all what she would have expected. Aldrich drove it himself. He parked near the cabin and got out, moving like someone who had all the time in the world. He wore jeans and a dark shirt, looking less like a crime boss and more like someone who actually belonged on a ranch. He approached the porch slowly, giving her time to accept his presence. "Coffee?" Jalea asked. He nodded, and she went inside to get him a cup. When she came back out, he was sitting on the porch steps, looking out at the valley like he owned it. Maybe Jalea thought he did now. Maybe saving him had transferred the deed. They sat in silence for a while, neither of them needing to fill the quiet. The coffee steamed. The sun finished its climb. The day settled into its usual rhythm. "I came to check the fence," Aldrich said finally. "North side." Jalea knew the fence was fine. She checked it herself 2 days ago, but she grabbed her work gloves anyway, and they walked together toward the northern boundary of the property. The fence was solid. The posts were set deep. The wire was tight. Aldrich examined it anyway, running his hand along the metal, checking the tension. He moved like someone who knew about land, about the work of keeping it secure. "Good maintenance," he said. "Your father teach you?" "Mother," Jalea said. "My father died when I was young. She died bitter. The land was all she left me, so I learned to keep it alive." Aldrich nodded like that made sense to him. "I have a daughter," he said. It came out quiet, almost like he was telling himself more than telling her. "She's 7. She doesn't talk much. The doctors say it's autism spectrum. She gets overwhelmed by sound and light and too many people." Jalea waited for him to continue. "She asks about you," Aldrich said. "She calls you the water lady. She wants to know if you're real or if I made you up." Something shifted in Jalea's chest, something soft and unexpected. "Tell her I'm real," Jalea said. They walked the perimeter of the property, not talking much, just existing in each other's presence. It was the strangest conversation Jalea had ever had. Being near someone this powerful, someone this dangerous, and finding that the danger seemed to matter less when they were just walking a fence line together. By noon, Aldrich left. He drove away slowly, the same way he'd come, and the valley returned to its ordinary quiet. But something had shifted. The watching presence that had felt threatening before now felt almost protective. Like she wasn't living inside an observation, but inside a circle drawn for her safety. Over the next few weeks, Aldrich visited regularly. Always alone, always without announcement. Sometimes he fixed things, a loose gate hinge, a section of roof that was starting to fail. Sometimes he just sat and watched the land with her, and they talked about small things. The seasons changing, the patterns of the horses, the quality of the light. He never asked about that first day, never asked if she was frightened or if she regretted saving him. He just accepted the fact of her kindness the way you accept that water runs downhill. It was simply the nature of the thing. The town started to change too. Jalea noticed it when she went into town for supplies. The crime rate had dropped to almost nothing. Strangers didn't move through Redwood Basin anymore, not with 300 invisible guards watching the perimeter. The place had become the safest valley in the state, and no one could quite figure out why. People whispered. Jalea would catch fragments of conversation at the feed store or the diner. They knew something had changed. They just didn't know what. One afternoon, sitting on the porch with Aldrich, Jalea decided to ask, "Why do you keep coming back?" Aldrich didn't answer right away. He looked out at the valley, at the land that had become his to protect, at the woman who had given him water when she could have left him to die. "Because you saw me when I was nothing," he said finally. "You gave me water and asked nothing in return. In my world, that kind of kindness is rarer than diamonds, and rarer things are more precious." He turned to look at her directly. "And because," he added, "I have enemies, powerful enemies, people who would take everything from me if they could find the leverage. And you've become that leverage just by existing, just by saving my life. So I'm here because it's the only way I know to keep you safe. Because I owe you a debt I can never fully repay." Jalea understood then. The protection wasn't random. It wasn't just gratitude. It was debt, and Aldrich Vale paid his debts with absolute precision. She also understood that her quiet life had ended the moment she gave him water, that she was now woven into something much larger, much more dangerous, much more complicated than the simple ranching life she'd lived before. But as she looked at this man, powerful and controlled, and carrying some deep wound that had nothing to do with his shoulder, she found that she didn't want to go back. The danger was only part of what she felt. The rest was something that had no name yet, something that grew with each visit, each conversation, each moment where he sat with her and just let himself be something other than the tyrant everyone else knew him to be. That night, after he left, Jalea stood alone on her porch and realized that the red arrow pointing at her cabin hadn't been a threat. It had been a marking, a claiming, a declaration that this place, this woman, this small patch of land in the middle of Redwood Basin now belonged to Aldrich Vale in a way that went deeper than ownership. She had given him water. Now she would have to live with the consequences of mercy toward a man who didn't know how to accept kindness without weaponizing it. And she was beginning to realize that maybe she didn't want to refuse that consequence anymore. But tomorrow would bring a different kind of reckoning, one that would challenge everything Aldrich had promised her and force her to understand that protection in his world came with a price written in something much darker than water or blood. The morning Jalea learned who she'd really saved started like any other morning. She was feeding the horses when the phone came alive. Not a call, but a message alert. A text from a number she didn't recognize, 3 words, "Check the news." She pulled up a news app on her phone, and there it was. Front page. Headline that made her stomach drop. Infamous Mafia lieutenant found dead in remote location. Corbin Slate, 52, identified after 2-week disappearance. The article was sparse on details. Corbin Slate, described as a high-ranking operative in an organized crime network, had been discovered in a location the police weren't disclosing. No apparent cause of death mentioned. No suspects. No investigation pending. Which meant Jalea understood immediately that someone had made sure there was nothing to investigate. She didn't know if it was Aldrich or if Aldrich had simply allowed something else to happen. But either way, her saving a man had resulted in someone's death. That was the equation she'd never solved. That was the price she was only now really understanding. By afternoon, Aldrich showed up. He looked different. Older maybe, or just carrying more weight. He moved like someone who'd been making difficult decisions all morning and had come to her because the weight was finally too much to carry alone. "You saw the news," he said. It wasn't a question. "Who was he?" Jalea asked. "A man who tried to kill me," Aldrich replied. "A man who would have tried again. A man who needed to be removed from the world. and the world is better off without him. His voice was calm, clinical, but underneath it, Jalea could hear something else, a justification he was offering not to her, but to himself. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," Aldrich continued. "I know what I am. I know what I do, but I want you to understand that the choice you made to save me, that choice has consequences. The man who bled in your dirt that first morning would have been buried in that dirt if we just waited another hour. Corbin would have made sure of it. So when you look at what happened to him, understand that it was the price of your mercy." Jalea felt something cold move through her chest. Not fear exactly, something more complicated. "So I killed him," she said quietly, "by saving you." "No," Aldrich said, "I killed him. You just made sure I was alive to do it." He moved closer to her, and Jalea didn't step back. "There are men gathering right now," Aldrich said. "Men from the organizations that Corbin used to control. Men who think that maybe they can use my weakness against me. Men who have decided that a man who let a civilian save his life is a man who's gone soft." "Are they coming here?" Jalea asked. "They're thinking about it," Aldrich replied. "Which means I need to be very clear with everyone that this place, this woman, this land is under my full protection. That any move against you is a move against me. That your life has a price so high that no one in their right mind would dare touch it." He paused. "Let that sink in. But it means I need to do something public. Something that removes all doubt about my commitment to keeping you safe." "What are you going to do?" Jalea asked. Aldrich was quiet for a long moment. "I'm going to invite the regional families to gather here," he said finally. "I'm going to bring them to your property, and I'm going to make a statement that will echo through every organization in this hemisphere. I'm going to tell them that you saved my life, and that anyone who touches you will answer to me personally." Jalea's stomach turned over. "When?" she asked. 3 days, Aldrich said. "I need to send the word, gather the families, get security in place. 3 days to make sure that when I make that statement, there's no doubt anywhere in the world about my commitment." He reached out and took her hand. His grip was gentle, almost tender, but there was power underneath it. The same power that had moved 300 men in black suits. The same power that made grown men disappear. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry that saving me has cost you your peace. I'm sorry that your quiet valley is about to become something else. But I need you to know that when I'm done, when this is finished, no one will ever threaten you again. You will be the most protected woman in North America." Jalea looked at their joined hands and thought about the trajectory her life had taken in just 2 weeks. From solitude to surveillance. From peace to danger. From being nobody to being the protected treasure of one of the most powerful men alive. After the gathering, she said slowly, "What happens to us?" Aldrich didn't answer immediately. He looked out at the valley, at the land she'd inherited, at the place he was about to transform forever. "I don't know," he said finally. "That depends on you. On whether this protection stays a debt or becomes something more. On whether you can live in the shadow of what I am, knowing that your safety is built on other people's fear of me." He squeezed her hand once, gently, and then let go. 3 days, he said. Rest. Prepare yourself. And Jalea, when they come, when you see what I'm capable of, understand that every bit of it is directed at keeping you safe. He left the same way he'd come, alone in his truck, moving down the ranch road like a man returning to a war that would never let him rest. Jalea stood alone in the afternoon light and realized that tomorrow would bring the families. Tomorrow would bring power players from every organization in the network. Tomorrow would bring hundreds of men again, but this time it would be different. This time it would be a declaration of war disguised as a declaration of protection. And somewhere in the chaos of what was coming, Jalea would have to decide whether she was willing to become the symbol of Aldrich Vale's humanity or the proof of his weakness. And those two things, she was beginning to understand, might be the same thing seen from different angles. 3 days until everything changed again. And this time there would be no going back to the quiet girl on the quiet ranch in the quiet valley. What choice does a woman make when the only safety offered to her requires her to become the center of someone else's war? The valley filled with black vehicles starting at dawn. Jalea watched from the roof as they came up the main road, rolling in with precision that suggested this had been choreographed. Not just men in suits this time. Families of men, organizations, entire criminal networks flowing into her property like water finding its level. She counted them as they arrived. 50 vehicles, 100, 200, more. Each one carried representatives from different territories, different organizations, different power structures that normally would never be in the same space together. By noon, there were closer to 5. The hand came up. One hand. That was all Aldrich Vale needed. 300 men stopped breathing at the same time. Alara felt it. That collective pause, like the valley itself, was holding its lungs still. Corbin Slate's face twisted, his jaw working around words that suddenly didn't matter anymore. He laughed anyway, a sharp, bitter sound that cracked against the canyon walls. "You're going to burn for this, Aldrich," Corbin spat through blood-stained teeth. "The whole organization burns. Word gets out you showed mercy to a stranger, to a woman, and every enemy we got circles like vultures. You lose the throne." Aldrich didn't move, didn't blink. His expression remained flat as concrete. The silence stretched, not the comfortable kind, the suffocating kind, the kind that made grown men reconsider their life choices in the space of 3 seconds. Then he raised his index finger, not violently, not even with emphasis. Just pointed it toward the man, subtle as directing someone to a door. The 2 guards holding Corbin grabbed him by both arms. He fought, his body thrashed and twisted, his feet scraping trenches in the red dirt. But the guards moved him with the efficiency of men who had done this work before. Professional, trained, absolute. "Wait," Corbin screamed. His voice cracked across the arena. "Wait, I know things. I know about the Vancouver operation, about the shipments in Singapore, about Judge Patterson in." They walked him past the fence line, into the tree coverage where the light stopped reaching, where nobody could see what happened next. Alara's stomach flipped. Her hands went cold. She wanted to look away, but her eyes wouldn't move. Couldn't move. The fascination of witnessing something she shouldn't see held her frozen in place. A single gunshot echoed back through the canyon. One clean sound, then nothing. Absolutely nothing. The 300 men didn't flinch, didn't exchange glances, didn't show a single crack in their discipline. They simply stood there, faces forward, waiting for what came next. Aldrich turned back to her. His dark eyes found hers across the 10 feet of dirt between them. He walked toward her slowly, deliberately, his shadow stretching long in the fading light. "You saved me without knowing my past," he said quietly. His voice carried to every corner of the arena without raising an octave. "I will repay you by safeguarding your future." Alara's throat felt like it was closing. "I don't need protection. You have no neighbors for 6 miles, Aldrich replied. The statement was factual, brutal in its honesty. Someone could take everything from you. Someone could hurt you in ways that would take days for the screaming to stop, and no one would hear it but the coyotes. He paused, his jaw tightened slightly. "So I will leave men in your valley," he continued. "Quiet ones, hidden ones, watching. You will never see them unless you call for them, but they will see everything." "I don't want a war here," Alara whispered. "It is not a war," Aldrich said. "It is gratitude." He stepped past her without another word and walked toward the convoy of cars. His men followed in perfect, synchronized waves. The formation dissolved like it was choreographed. Cars fired up, dust rose, and within minutes, the valley returned to silence. But it was different now. The silence had teeth. Alara stood alone in the arena with blood in the dirt and a decision she never made suddenly reshaping her entire world. Somewhere in the tree line, Corbin Slate was cooling. Somewhere in the black convoy, Aldrich Vale was already moving to his next war, his next problem, his next enemy. And somewhere in the shadows of her valley, men she would never see were taking positions around her ranch like invisible walls. She had wanted to help a dying stranger. Now, she was trapped inside an empire. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Leave your thoughts in the comments. What would you do in her position? Weeks passed like water through a sieve. Time moved differently in a valley under siege. Alara measured it not in days, but in small, impossible changes. The fence she had repaired 6 months ago suddenly stood reinforced. Not noticeably, just stronger. The posts buried deeper, the wires stretched tighter. She never saw anyone do the work. She simply woke up one morning and it was done. Then it was the water pump. She had been meaning to fix it for months. The handle stuck sometimes. The pressure dropped at night. But one afternoon, when she approached it with tools in hand, she found it already restored, working perfectly, like it had never been broken. The woodpile next to her cabin tripled when she wasn't looking. Her barn door, which hung at an angle she had accepted as permanent, swung smooth on its hinges. These weren't acts of violence or invasion. They were acts of care, the kind of care she couldn't refuse because she never caught anyone in the act. By the time she found each improvement, whoever had done it had already melted back into the landscape like they never existed at all. She learned not to talk about it. Not in town, not to anyone. Because the strangers in her valley were invisible, and visibility would have destroyed whatever arrangement Aldrich Vale had put in place. The town itself had changed. Crime that had plagued Redwood Basin for decades simply stopped. The Henderson place was no longer broken into every other month. The general store wasn't held up at gunpoint. The highway robbery that had cost 2 people their lives the previous year never happened again. People whispered about it in the diner. Some said the police finally got competent. Some said bad luck shifted. Some said they didn't want to know, and that was the smartest position to take. Alara knew better. She was the reason for it. Her act of mercy to a wounded stranger had painted a target on Redwood Basin. But instead of destruction, Aldrich Vale had chosen to protect the entire valley. His men moved through the landscape like ghosts, solving problems before they became crimes, preventing violence instead of responding to it. The irony twisted in her chest. She had wanted to save one man. She had ended up saving an entire town. Aldrich came back on a Thursday evening when the light was soft and the valley was empty. She recognized the sound of the car before she saw it. A single vehicle instead of convoy. He drove himself. No guards. No security detail. Just a man in a black suit stepping out of a black sedan, closing the door, and walking toward her porch like he had every right to be there. Which he did. He owned the valley now. Everyone knew it. Nobody said it out loud. "The fence needs paint," he said. His first words to her in over a month. Alara looked at the newly reinforced fence. It had weathered to gray, the wood showing the years. She hadn't thought about paint. Paint meant time. Paint meant staying. "I'll handle it," she replied. Aldrich nodded and moved to the porch rail. He leaned against it, his shoulders broad, his posture relaxed in a way that suggested he had finally stopped moving for a moment. His eyes studied the valley, the hills, the tree line, everything. "Do you hate me?" he asked. The question hung in the air between them like a thing with weight. "No," Alara said. "The man in the canyon. Do you think about it?" She did, every night. She thought about Corbin Slate and the gunshot and the mercy that turned into an execution in the space of 3 seconds. She thought about Aldrich's face, untouched by emotion as his finger came up. She thought about the consequence of her kindness, a man learning that showing weakness led to the only logical response in his world. Sometimes, she told him. Aldrich turned to look at her. His eyes were darker now, heavier, like something inside him had shifted and was settling into a new weight. "He was going to kill you," Aldrich said. "Not immediately, but he would have, because you saw me vulnerable. That's how it works in my world. Vulnerabilities get exploited. They get weaponized. They get turned into reasons for assassination." "He was wrong," Alara said quietly. "He was following the logic of his survival," Aldrich replied. "But you taught me something that day. You taught me that logic isn't the only language people understand." The sun dropped lower. The sky turned pink and orange. The shadows stretched longer across the valley. 2 people stood on a porch in the middle of nowhere, and between them sat the weight of an empire and a choice that would echo through every decision to come. Aldrich stayed until the light died completely. They didn't talk much after that. Sometimes silence was the conversation. Sometimes presence was the message. When he left, she watched his taillights disappear into the tree line, and she understood that she had just experienced something like intimacy that didn't require touching. But in the darkness beyond the ranch, the invisible men shifted positions. They moved closer to the house. They ran security checks. They prepared for something coming that Aldrich seemed to sense before the actual threat arrived. Subscribe and hit that notification bell. The real danger is about to show itself. Share your reactions in the comments below. The phone rang at 3:47 in the morning. Alara's eyes snapped open in the darkness. She had been sleeping lighter these days, her mind ready to respond to anything. The phone kept ringing. She didn't recognize the number. For a moment, she considered not answering. Then she picked it up. "Your fence has a breach," the voice said. "Male, steady, emotionless, north side, half-mile from the property line. Someone's been watching." The line went dead. Alara sat in the dark, her heart hammering against her ribs. She got out of bed, pulled on her boots, grabbed the rifle she had started keeping loaded by the door. The night air bit cold as she stepped outside. She didn't see anyone. She didn't see anything, but she felt it, that shift in the atmosphere, the presence of people moving with purpose. She counted at least 15 shadows moving through her valley, all heading toward the north fence line, all moving quiet. A gunshot cracked the night open, then another, then a burst of automatic fire that lit up the darkness for a fraction of a second. Muzzle flashes bloomed like brief flowers. The sound echoed wrong, not in her valley but beyond it, on the neighboring property, the land that had been abandoned for 5 years. She heard shouting, not clear words, just anger, aggression, the sound of men trying to kill other men in the dark. Then Aldrich pulled up in his black sedan. He moved like he was floating, like the ground was helping him along. 2 men flanked him as he approached her. They carried rifles professionally. Their eyes scanned everything. "There are people who believe I was wrong," Aldrich said without preamble. "They believe I'm vulnerable now. They believe protecting a woman from a farm proves I'm soft. What do you want me to do?" Alara asked. "Nothing," Aldrich replied. "You do nothing. My men handle this. You go back inside. You lock the door. You don't come out until morning." "Who are they?" "People who learned too late that trying to use you as leverage was a mistake," Aldrich answered. "People who sent scouts to map your ranch. People who believe that by understanding your location and your schedule, they could predict me." The gunfire intensified beyond the property line. It sounded closer now. She realized the fighting was moving, being pushed back toward the forest, being corralled. "By morning, this ends," Aldrich said. "By tomorrow evening, no one will remember this was a problem." "How many?" Alara whispered. 12 men, he replied. "Experienced ones. They were good. But good is relative when you're outnumbered 3-1. He stepped past her and walked into her cabin like he owned it. She followed him inside. He moved through her kitchen, through her living room, to her back window. From there, he could see the valley, see the fighting, see the way his men were systematically working through the opposing force. "They told their leadership that you were unguarded," Aldrich said, still looking out the window. "They said your ranch was remote. They said I was distracted. They said the opportunity was real." He turned to face her. His eyes were flat, resolved. "I'm going to teach them what happens when people lie about their intelligence," he continued. "I'm going to make sure that in every organization that challenges me, they remember this night. I'm going to make sure that trying to use you, knowing you are under my protection, becomes the worst decision they could make." The gunfire stopped. The silence that followed was absolute, complete. The kind of silence that meant the problem had been solved with finality. Aldrich walked past her to the door. He opened it. He stepped out into the night air. She watched him from the window as he approached his men. They stood in formation, waiting. He said something too quiet for her to hear. The men dispersed immediately. When he came back inside, blood marked the cuff of his shirt. "Not his blood. Pack a bag," he said. "You're leaving here for a few days. Not far, 30 miles north. My place, neutral territory, until I'm certain this is settled." "No," Alara said. Aldrich looked at her, actually looked at her, saw her, understood that she had just refused him. Yes, he said quietly. You are. Because the next group that comes will be larger and smarter. And I need to know you're safe while I deal with the consequences of my protection. This is my home, she said. Your home will still be here, Aldrich replied. But you won't be alive to enjoy it if you stay. He left her there in the dark, and she understood that she didn't have a choice anymore. Mercy had trapped her. Kindness had locked her inside a cage of protection so complete that her freedom had become impossible. Don't miss what comes next. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. The story is about to change everything. Let me know in the comments. Is Aldrich a protector or a captor? The helicopter touched down on a landing pad she couldn't have imagined existed before today. The compound rose from the landscape like something pulled straight from another world. Glass and steel and architectural brutality. Windows that reflected the sky back at itself. Walls that suggested nothing dangerous happened inside them, even though she could feel the weight of violence in the very air. Aldrich had disappeared the moment they landed. One of his men escorted her through corridors that all looked the same. White walls, black trim, the kind of design that said nothing about who lived here. They reached a room on the 7th floor. A suite, actually, not a prison cell disguised as a room. An actual living space with windows that overlooked the entire city. She was trapped in luxury. For 3 days, she existed in that room. Meals appeared. Clean clothes appeared. Everything she needed materialized through staff who spoke in whispers and moved like they were made of air. She learned not to ask questions. Questions only created complications. On the 4th morning, Aldrich walked into her room without knocking. He looked destroyed, not physically. His suit was pristine. His face was clean, but his eyes carried something that looked like the price of command. Like he had been awake for 72 hours making decisions that all ended in blood. 23 people are dead, he said without preamble. 12 from the first attack, 8 from the organization that sent them. 3 of mine who died protecting the valley. Alara felt the weight of those numbers. 23 people. 23 lives reduced to casualties in a war that started because she gave water to a wounded man. The message has been received, Aldrich continued. Anyone who tries to use you as leverage dies. It's that simple. It's that clear. And now it's documented. He sat down across from her. For the first time, she saw exhaustion crack through his exterior. Real exhaustion. The kind that came from making hard choices and living with their consequences. I have to go to Singapore, he said. An operation that was waiting for me to have time. I need to deal with something that's been scheduled for months. While I'm gone, you have options. What kind of options? Alara asked. You can return to your ranch, Aldrich said. You will have security now. Not invisible. Visible. They will be part of your life. Where you can stay here. You can stay safe. You can stay protected. Or what? She asked. Aldrich's eyes met hers. He was about to lie to her. She could see it forming in his mind. Some version of kindness that would make this easier. Then he decided against it. Where you can leave, he said. I could set you up anywhere in the country. New identity. Enough money to never worry about survival again. You can walk away from all of this and pretend this never happened. The offer hung between them like a blade. Alara thought about her ranch. About the land that had been part of her family for 3 generations. About the isolation that had been her sanctuary until she found a wounded man bleeding by her fence. I want to go home, she said. Aldrich nodded like he had expected that answer. Then you go home, he said, and you understand that my men will be there. That your life will be visible now. That anyone who tries anything will create an international incident. What about you? Alara asked. Aldrich stood. He looked out the window at the city sprawling below them. I keep doing what I've always done, he replied. I run an empire. I solve problems. I make sure that people who betray me understand the cost. But now, I do it with the knowledge that somewhere in a valley in Redwood Basin, there's a woman who sees me as something other than the violence I create. He walked to the door. That matters, he said. That matters more than you'll ever understand. He left her there in that room with windows that looked out at a world she would never fully be part of. She understood now that Aldrich Vale had made a choice about her that went beyond protection. He had made her real. He had made her matter. And that meant she could never go back to being invisible again. Subscribe and don't miss the final chapter. The conclusion will change everything. Tell me in the comments, what choice would you make? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. The valley looked exactly the same. That's what shocked her most. The grass hadn't changed color. The fence hadn't moved. The cabin still sat where it had always been, tin roof, weathered to gray. But everything was different now, because she was different. The helicopter set down in the arena. The same arena where 300 men had surrounded her just weeks before. Now it sat empty except for the dust. The pilot opened the door. Aldrich stepped out first, helping her down like they were arriving at a wedding instead of a war zone. 3 black SUVs were already positioned at the perimeter of her property. Armed men stood beside each one. They weren't trying to hide. They were there to be seen, to be counted, to send a message. Your team, Aldrich said, gesturing toward them. They stay. They work in shifts. They run perimeter checks every 4 hours. Anyone tries anything, they respond. No questions. No hesitation. For how long? Ilera asked. Until I determine the threat has fully dissipated, Aldrich replied. Which, given the structure of criminal organizations, might be forever. They walked toward her cabin. Her porch was exactly as she had left it. Her kitchen exactly the same. The only difference was the new world existing right outside her windows. Aldrich moved through the space like he was saying goodbye to it. He touched the table. He looked at the photographs on her walls. Family people he didn't know. He stood at the window, overlooking the valley. I have to leave in an hour, he said. Singapore won't wait. Neither will the people who are expecting me to solve their problems. But before I go, I need to know something. What? Ilera asked. Do you regret it? Aldrich turned to face her. Do you regret saving me? Ilera thought about the question. She thought about the blood in the dirt. She thought about Corbin Slate disappearing into the tree line. She thought about the gunshots in the night and the bodies on the neighboring property. She thought about 23 people dead because she gave water to a wounded man. No, she said, I don't regret it. Aldrich nodded slowly. Something in his expression shifted, settled, like she had just answered a question that determined the direction of his entire future. Then I need to tell you something, he said, something I haven't told anyone else. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph, black and white, aged. He handed it to her. It was a woman, young, beautiful, dark eyes that looked like Aldrich's eyes. She was holding a child, a girl maybe 4 years old. My daughter, Aldrich said. Leah, she's 7 now. She's at a facility upstate. Safe, protected. She has autism, and most of the world doesn't know how to treat her except as a problem to solve. Ilera looked up from the photograph. When you saved me, Aldrich continued, I was running from a decision. My own men tried to kill me because I wanted to step back, because I wanted to spend time with Leah instead of running an empire. They didn't believe someone like me could walk away. He took the photograph back. Your kindness made me realize something, he said. It made me understand that maybe I don't have to choose between being a father and being powerful. Maybe power should mean protecting the people I love instead of destroying everyone who challenges me. What are you saying? Ilera whispered. I'm saying that I'm going to change, Aldrich replied. I'm going to step back from operations that don't matter. I'm going to spend more time with my daughter. I'm going to teach her that the world isn't all violence, the way my world tried to teach me. He moved toward the door. And I'm asking you something, he said. When you're ready. When you process this. When you understand what it means to be connected to someone like me. I want you to meet her. What? Ilera asked. Because she needs to understand that gentleness exists, Aldrich answered. And because I believe you're the person who can teach her that. He stepped onto the porch. The afternoon light caught his profile. For a moment, he looked tired, vulnerable, real. I'll call you, he said, when the Singapore situation is handled. Well, I'm certain the valley is secure. We'll talk about what happens next. And if I say no, Ilera asked. Aldrich smiled. Small, real, almost sad. Then I accept that, he said. And I spend my life knowing that for 3 weeks, I existed as something other than a weapon. That's enough. He walked to the helicopter without looking back. She watched him lift off, watched the aircraft rise into the sky, watched it disappear into the clouds until only the sound remained. Then even the sound faded. The valley fell quiet, but it wasn't the lonely quiet anymore. It was the quiet of people breathing together, the quiet of invisible men in the tree line, the quiet of a choice made, the quiet of consequences accepted and futures uncertain. Alara stood on her porch as the sun moved lower, and she understood that she had just lived through something that would reshape her entire existence. She had wanted to help a stranger. The stranger had turned out to be a king. And now, she was a piece of his empire whether she wanted to be or not. But somewhere in that complexity lived something real, something that looked like the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. The wind moved through the valley. It carried dust and the smell of pine and the sound of distant engines. Alara closed her eyes and let it wash over her, and in the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw Leah's face. A child who needed to understand gentleness. A child who needed to know that the world contained more than just survival. Maybe that's why she had given water to a wounded man. Maybe that's why 300 men surrounded a ranch. Maybe that's why everything that followed happened the way it did. Fate didn't knock. It just appeared at your door bleeding, and you made a choice, and that choice rippled outward forever. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that will change how you see the world. Leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think comes next for Alara and Aldrich? Share this video with someone who believes in the power of kindness. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next story.